Hello and welcome to the Female Voice Zoomcast. I'm Shanice.
And I'm Lauren.
I'm Aneka.
I'm Takara.
Hi, we're going to be talking about parenting out of fear, and we do have a special guest. As you may be aware of previous conversations, I'm a parent. I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And then we also have another parent on the Zoomcast today. She's our special guest. Her name is Shatima. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Shatima, to our audience.
Hi, I'm Shatima. I have 2 kids, 2 girls, 17 and 2 years old.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us, Shatima. Our conversation today is going to be about parenting out of fear. And before we get into the conversation of parenting out of fear, I just want to just break it down to let you know we're not talking about fear-based parenting. Basically, that's that authoritative type of parenting where you want your children to fear you in order to comply. We're talking more like parenting out of fear. So for instance, I have 2 Black sons. There are certain things I won't allow my 2 Black sons to do that their white friends can do because my fear is that something might happen to them and they may have a different consequence. They might not understand that consequence, why they can't do the things that they can do, but we may put restrictions on our children based on our fears of things that can happen to them. So this is going to bring us into our first question. Let me get my questions ready. Sorry. Do you believe, so ladies on the panels, if you're not a parent, you have been parented. So this is a discussion that everybody can join. So do you believe you have been parented out of fear? And if you are a parent, do you believe you parent out of fear? So we can go in any order. Whoever wants to take the first question, go ahead and give it a go.
I don't feel like I've been parented out of fear. I did grow up with both parents in the home. I had a lot of liberties, but I did have rules. But thinking back on my childhood, I don't think that my parents, but also like parented me out of like fear, like things that were going to happen. I did have to be home before the street lights were on. I could, kind of hang with certain people. And maybe there were things that didn't happen that maybe I'm just not aware of. I wasn't aware of it being a child, that my parents had barriers for me that I just wasn't aware of. But I didn't feel like that. I felt like I was able to do most of, whatever it is that I wanted to do growing up. There might even been times they probably could have, maybe should have been like, wait, a little more helicopter, like, wait, maybe, should be a little watching this a little more. But I was maybe, I kind of was one of those kids that I might have been, adjacent to things and just not maybe participating. I was maybe in the building, but I just wasn't an active participant. So no, my answer would be no. I don't think I don't think that I was parented out of fear.
I was definitely parented out of fear. My parents were immigrants from Nigeria, and they were very anxious about the differences they were seeing in the Nigerian children and American children, and basically how wild American children were compared to Nigerian children. And they did not want us to grow up and start behaving like that. So we were not allowed to sleep over kids' houses. We also weren't allowed to really just kind of like hang out as much. I felt like I kind of was trapped in the house a lot. I would like, hey, can I go to the mall with my friends? And it's like, do your homework. I did my homework. Okay. Did you clean? I cleaned. I did everything. Okay, well, sit down. So there was it was just like, they didn't want us out mixing and mingling, living. I think they were scared of teenage pregnancy. They were scared of drugs. They were scared of picking up just disrespectful behaviors. There was fear of failure, I think, not, being successful in our culture, education. is really important. And there's a lot of emphasis placed on occupation, had very high standards in school. Like, you know, if I came home with 4 A's and an A-, my father would tell me there's room for improvement here, right? So really high standards, very strict parents. They were like super scared that we weren't going to be, you know, what they envisioned. And so I had a really strict household. Now me, I'm somebody who can't be controlled. Well, I've always been strong-willed. I do my thing, right? So I was definitely sneaking out of my bedroom window to go hang out with my friends when I was a teenager and doing other, you know, little sneaky things to get out and about and live life. But they were definitely parenting us out of fear.
Does anybody else want to go next? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I do think that I was parented out of fear, and I think that fear was motivating for my mom, coming from little Dover, Delaware, not to give too much away, but just coming from a small area where everyone knows everyone, but there's not a lot of successful people around her. And I think that motivated her to want more, you know, experiencing certain things. I think it was always ingrained in us very young, which is kind of traumatic, that, you know, there's a generational curse in our family that you get pregnant as a teenager and, you know, you have multiple children and you just kind of stop. I think that was not what my mom wanted, although, you know, she did have me at a very young age, that there were things that she saw, you know, in teachers and things like that, that motivate her to, you know, Delaware is not the end for her. And I think that fear of being stuck pushed her to make certain decisions. Like college wasn't a choice. Like it was, you're going to college. You know, she's one of two first generational graduates, college graduates in our family. I was literally the third person in our family to graduate. So there was a lot of fear there, you know, getting pregnant, not being successful, getting stuck, not being well educated, you know, for what she thought education was. And I think that there was a lot of demand on her, a lot of pressure on her too, being the youngest of 6 children and the only one to go to school. And I think that motivated her to want to make my grandmother very happy. And the fear that she would not do that pushed her to make a lot of decisions. I'm sorry if I'm rambling. It's a very good topic. And I just think that parenting out of fear and experience of fear, like there was a lot of fear, I think, was placed on her very early that, you know, you can't do certain things. And I think that fear of living up to that is what shaped her as a parent. And I'll land there.
Do you, Karen Shatima, let's go back to you. Do you think you parent out of fear or no?
I think at first I did. There was a lot of fear that I was a disappointment because I had my first child at 22. So there was fear that I was a disappointment, not just in the church, but with my mom too. And so I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted my daughter to be perfect. I wanted to be perfect as a parent. I wanted to be perfect professionally. And so those decisions came from fear. Those decisions came from, you know, you're exactly who they say you are at this age. And so you have to prove them wrong. And that's a fear in itself, because you don't want to be more of a letdown than what you think you are. But a lot of those conversations are with yourself, and no one actually ever told you that or told me that. No one ever said that to me. It was just what I perceived the situation to be. And it really wasn't true. So I think I parented Jada, I didn't mean to say her name, but I parented her, like, you know, to, in a way that was a lot of times stressful. But also I will say that my parenting was a lot less strict than I grew up with, because like I didn't want her to, like, I always felt I was on edge. And so I didn't want her to be that kid. I didn't want her to be like feeling like she felt like she always had to make me happy, and kind of groomed her to kind of, think for yourself. I heard someone say a while ago, like, if you don't want your children to be their own person, don't have them. And I think that helped me a lot as she got older, to realize, like, you're going to have your own thoughts. You're going to have your, own experiences. And even though your experiences is a way that maybe you weren't completely happy, she doesn't have to have those same experiences. But at the same time, there's always your mother and your grandmother who have these notions of how they think you should parent, and you're constantly fighting against that. But you're kind of in a situation where, you feel like you still have to make them happy. And so there's a battle sometimes between, parenting in that fear, and then parenting in a way that you would make your kids thrive to be their own person.
It sounds like it's definitely a balance. Lorna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think this is a really good topic, because there's a certain amount of fear that is healthy, because this world is a very scary place. And so I was thinking about what Nneka said about spending the night out. Like I couldn't spend the night out either. And I never really understood why. And I had friends that were in my neighborhood that I'm just like, I'm over here. Can I just stay with, across the street or down the block? And the answer was just like, no. I know now about so many women and men that have been taken advantage of when they were young ages. I didn't realize that it was so prevalent, and that, being with, your friends' cousins, or, how we just were kind of raised all in this community, that there was a lot of, nefarious things going on at that time. I didn't even think of that. Because my worldview was very much around, I want to hang out and play Freddy Krueger games at nighttime. And so that just kind of made me think about, how it's difficult. I don't have children myself, but it's difficult as a parent to figure out how you can instill these values and protect your children from what is bad in the world. And also make sure that you're not driving them to the bad side of wanting to be rebellious for no reason. So it's difficult. I don't think that I was necessarily parented from fear, but I think that even the fear that they felt, they may not have chose to impart it on me, but it is really their reaction to the fear that they were parented with that kind of was still inside the mix. So I think it's a interesting kind of conversation.
And I would say, I think my parents parented me out of fear as well. My parents had me at a very young age. So there were certain things that I couldn't do as I was growing up. And now that I'm a parent, I understand why. But at the time, it's always like, well, I don't understand why I can't do that. And such is doing this. And, you always want to do what your friends are doing. And you don't know, as hindsight is, you're like, well, yeah, of course, like Lauren said, I know why my parent wouldn't let me go this place, that place, and third. In a sense, I think all parents have a little bit of fear in them in general. Just, I think it's kind of instinct. You want to keep your children safe. You want to keep them from making mistakes. You want to keep them from failing. But at the same time, like Shatima said, it's hard to find that balance. You don't want to shut down their individuality, because you don't want them to be scared to take risks because you don't want to take risks. You don't want to let them take risks. So my husband and I parent now. I think we do sometimes parent out of the sense of, we won't let you do these things because we know the outcome. You may not understand it now. So you like I said, like my sons, they want to hang out with their friends and they want to do certain things, but your friends are white, honey. It's like, like you have to understand they're going to be able to get away with certain things, but because you're because you're a boy, there's certain things you won't be able to get away with. So in sense of, this is a crazy world right now for Black people. It's always been. For Black people, there are certain things we won't let them do. There are certain times we won't let them hang out. There are certain places we won't go. And as far as like spending the night at people's house, we won't allow our children to do it. Because there's so many cases, especially with our daughter, you know, there's so many cases where people are, like you said, are taken advantage of. And so those natural fears of, hey, I want to protect my child from something that they can't get themselves out of. You know, I don't want them put them in a situation where they can't get themselves out, or it's going to cause them trauma, and you know, and then we're going to end up paying for therapy in the future because we felt like we neglected them or we failed them in a certain area. But yet we don't want them to grow up and rebel and say, well, they didn't let me do that, and now I'm gonna do it now, you know. So there's always this sense of fear, but there's also a sense of we want them to make their own decisions. I was watching Blackish, the show, and they were talking. Is it Andre? That's the guy, the lead character, right? The dad. I don't know if you guys watch the show, but he was in the conference room with his coworkers. And the dads were talking, they were all parents, and they were saying, like, the white parents are like, oh yeah, we don't want to be mean to our kids. We don't want to tell them no. We want us to see us as cool. And then the two Black guys are like, well, when our girl was growing up, I wasn't allowed to think for myself. It wasn't until my mom died, you know, that I found the freedom to think for myself, you know. So I don't want that for our kids. I want them to be able to free independent thinking, but I don't want them to have to suffer the consequence of free independent thinking. It's like it's like a catch-22. Like either I parent this way, or then they have to learn on the hard way. And as a parent, you don't want your child to have to learn the hard way.
And the world is changing too, because the things that, you know, you had to deal with are not the same things that this generation has to deal with too. I was talking to my cousin, and even just talking about spending the night, my cousin has he's a male child that has a best girlfriend, and they want to just, you know, stay the night over each other. And that's perfectly fine for the friend circle that they're in to have this mix, like girl and boy sleepover, where I could not even begin to think about doing that when I was growing up. And they don't understand, you know, why they can't, because everything is so, you know, different now. So sometimes we have fears about, you know, how it used to be or what we know could happen. And then they're just like, this is a new world. We don't have those same problems that y'all had. This is a different place. So it's you know, it's interesting.
Quick question, and I don't know, this came to mind to go along with the fear too, is like my mother put us in like sports every term, we had to do a sport. And in her mind, and she said this, like, if you're too busy, you won't have time to get into anything. And I think that comes from fear too, like, you know, keep them busy, they can't get in trouble, which is not always true, because if you really want to do something, you're going to find a way. But that was one of the things that I remember growing up, is like, you know, if you're in, you know, sports and choir rehearsal and junior usher board, like all these different things, not just sports, you just won't have the time. But going back to something Shanice said about, like, you know, spending the night, and, you know, our daughter has a different type of friends that I had growing up too. And some of her friends are white. And I remember, like, the first time being in high school, when she asked, could she spend a night over this little girl's house? And I'm like, instantly I was like, why do you want to spend a night over there? Or why do you want you to spend a night over there? Like, you know, I started thinking they stealing Black kids' organs, like all these different things that I'm not kidding you. Like, they gonna steal your organs. Like, it's too many cases where missing people come up, and I'm just not really for it. And it was like, but I also had to have a conversation with her, like, okay, you know, you're like 15, 16 now. Okay, but I need you to know, like, at the end of the day, you're still a Black child, a Black person. So I need you not to walk around their house alone. I need you not to go in their kitchen. Like your friend, you need to be with a friend. And I think that comes from fear. Like, you know, even going into the mall, like I had to train myself not to like not look suspicious, to think that someone, you know, is going to think I'm stealing. And I think that comes from like generational fear.
Right. Generational trauma. Like you say, like these kind of social cultural norms that we've all been, like you say, like kind of faced with. And I mean, it is contrastly different. And before you brought it up about Blackish, Shanice, I was thinking about like, you know, that it is a drastic difference between like when I talk to my white friends versus, you know, Black and being with like talking with, you know, me and my friends, you know, the Black culture with parenting. Like our parenting from fear is like, oh, I got to, you know, protect my child. Like you say, my Black sons, you know, I don't want my child to be taken. What's going on? We suspicious of everything. Like Black parents may take it that way, but white children, I mean, white parents tend to look at it differently where like even my friends now who have you know, young children, their fear is more of a like you say, wanting to be friends. And it's like they can be so afraid to do the wrong things and upset their kids that they don't do anything at all. Which, you know, is like, you know, for us, it's like do nothing. You know, it's like, it's crazy to think like that, you know, their fear is more of, I don't want to push my kids away. You know, I don't want to make them upset. You know, like you said, I want to, like, I don't like their fear is completely opposite. Not the fear of something is going to happen bad, like not that sense of doom, but a different sense of doom of I'm gonna lose my child if I'm too strict. So it's like, I'd rather do nothing than do like wrong thing, which keeps them from really doing the right thing. And they, like my friends, they like struggle with that, with their kids have it, because they have issues too, but they just, they don't deal with things the way we do. They kind of just be like, well, no, you know, again, they almost get paralyzed as far as like, well, I'm just gonna, you know, let them do that. I don't want to, you know, discipline them or do anything. They'll just kind of, you know, I just feel like it's like you're so afraid of doing the wrong thing, you won't even do the right thing.
It's interesting hearing some of the things you guys are saying. I was thinking back to my childhood, and I really don't think my parents ever spoke with us about like, you're Black, so you have to be careful when you do these things. It was never a discussion. It wasn't, they didn't talk to us about racism. There was never like, because you're Black, be careful of this, or this could happen to you that won't happen to your friends. And we grew up in a very white suburb, and that was just not anything that was discussed. And it wasn't really anything that I thought about when I was out in the world, in the white world. So it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, that's a different aspect that I guess my parents weren't really
Your
thinking
parents
about.
were more afraid of you, like, you know,
Acting like an American
the
child.
Black American culture, you would say.
I don't even think it was Black American. We weren't even around Black Americans that much, just American. You know, Americans tend to be a little bit more free with their children, and they have, you know, a lot more freedoms. And you know, in Nigeria, children are very obey your parent. It's very strict, very restricted. There's no talking back. You have to like listen to what they say. So I think it was less so race-based, just the culture, American culture. They were scared that we were going to assimilate and start behaving like those children. And then another thing, when you guys were talking about, it made me think that there's like also gendered kind of fear, like with the boys. People are fearful of, it sounds like, police brutality and racism. And it sounds like maybe not really speaking to their daughters as much about that. I guess they're less fearful about that, which I think, you know, it should be probably a consideration for the girls too, because they may encounter some of those same issues. And then I also feel like, you know, people are more concerned about teenage pregnancy, the emphasis on the girl, and also sometimes pedophilia, the girl. And we forget those same things can be concerns for boys. And sometimes that gets kind of, you know, it can be like an oversight, brushed by the wayside, not thought about, not discussed as much. And so it's just interesting how, you know, when you hear people speak about it, it can kind of be a gendered type of thing, where we have specific fears based on whether they're male or female.
Yeah, I agree. But I think with us, I think Aji and I are so race anything. So they hear race stuff all the time because that's something that we talk about either with both our boys and our girls. But I think it's we do specify through, like you said, with the boys when they go out with their friends, because boys our with our daughter, she really doesn't. She goes out, like she'll hang out with the park with her friends. She'll do this, but our boys, they walk around the neighborhood. They do, they're more like explorative with their group. Where she's like they're in like one certain area, or they're at they're at more likely her grandparents' house, where she's not as maybe as she gets older, they'll start branching out a little bit more. But with our boys right now, they're more of, all right, we're going here and then we're going to be at there. And then and one thing too that if they do go out without us, they have to have their phone on them. So like they're not allowed to go certain places without a phone, because we always want, and it has to be charged up. There's certain things that we put up, make sure that they have, like before they go out, our daughters and our sons, they both have to have their phone. It has to be charged up. They have to be able to, be able to call us, make sure that you're not in the area where you're going to lose reception. So our daughter is aware of race because that's all we talk about. And she is aware of like, there are things that can happen to Black girls too. And our sons, they are young still, but we don't get into like pedophilia, like not like that with them yet, because they're still kind of young, even though it can happen. But our daughter, she's older, so it's a balance, and we just haven't gotten to those lines. But as we get to those lines, we'll definitely cross it with them, because they both know they're perverts out there that will take advantage of you, regardless if you're a boy or a girl. And that's why we don't let them sleep at anybody's house. That's just for like boy or girl. You're not going to a sleepover, especially if we don't know their parents. We don't let our kids hang out with other kids unless we don't know our parents. We're so we're pretty strict when it comes to like, if we don't know their parents, you're not going. We haven't met them at least once. We haven't filled them out. If IG hasn't run a background check, just kidding. Just kidding. But we're not hanging out with our kids. So we're very protective over them in that sense, because we don't want anything to put them in a situation where they can't get out of. Yeah. And so, which leads us to the next question. We talked about a little bit, and we got into this a little bit, which about historical trauma. So do you think Black people, let me read the whole question so I'll read it correctly. All right. Do you think fear-based parenting within the Black community is due to historical trauma? So if you think about it, we've been through a lot as a marginalized group in our country. Do you think we parent out of fear? Do you think like Andre and Blackist and other that we know as truths? Like, like my grandma would say, you ain't such and such and such and such kid. You might, you get all of that from is that based off of historical trauma? Like all that fear-based projection on our children, is that based off historical trauma? If anybody wants to go and answer that
one. Well, I'll say for me and my family, they were immigrants from Nigeria, so it's not necessarily the same trauma. There's definitely trauma, but it's not the same. And my parents definitely had fear-based parenting, which was rooted in different reasons. So for my fam, I'm going to say no.
I would say, I think yes for, Black people. I don't know. I mean, we talk like in the general sense when we talk about, generational trauma, we're talking about slavery, but I think that, or, and like, structural racism in America. But I think, these are things that are just passed down culturally. I don't know if they're always like traumatic things. This is just the way we parent. This is how it's a cycle. This is how my, parents, treat, this is how my parents parented me. This is how my grandparents parented them. Like there are things that we will just kind of, there are common threads that will just pass through the generations. But then you'll have people like, like you say, like maybe NECA or Shatima who say, I want to, like there may be aspects that you want to do differently, like it's still gonna, look, the same, but it might, there may be just some nuanced changes to be like, I didn't like this, or, I want to do this differently with my kids. Or, I mean, I know NECA doesn't have children, but I know that like, it was very, like NECA was saying, she was always strong-willed. And when you don't want, like, if you don't like that and you want to have more freedom, like it's more likely that you're going to give your children more freedom, because that was, kind of the piece that stood out to you was that, it was a lot of restriction. I didn't have like freedom. I would want to give my kids more freedom. Or I can't recall exactly what you were talking about, Shatima, but I remember you talking about, some things that were like a little bit different, but like there's some similarities that are, just cycle that are passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I would say that it is because of historical reasons. I think also we think about this level of privilege, right? We historically, because of white supremacy and the world, we haven't had the opportunity to think about how to allow our children to have freedom and think for themselves and be able to do all of these things that we are now just kind of broaching the ability to do, because that was just not, we weren't allowed to go anywhere we wanted to go and engage in things like skydiving and bungee jumping and vacations and all these things that we now are able to do that we weren't there yet. And so I think that we're just kind of figuring out how to break those cycles. And that has been just passed down through generations and generations of constriction, and making sure that we teach our children, in some cases, oppression, because that's kind of how the world was. And we had to teach them things to keep them safe. And we still are doing it. So, I think it's really this delicate balance that we walk, because there are certain things that we have to prepare our children for that are unfair, and we shouldn't have to. But in a lot of cases, we do. And that's kind of where, so it's kind of an offshoot of what has happened to us throughout the years. And so that's why I would definitely say, that yes, it is. And I would say also that it's a level of privilege that we now have, that we are able to even have these conversations about how we're going to parent our children differently than our grandparents did. So that's a sign of progress also.
I definitely agree with everyone. All the ladies made great points. And I just think I can't help but to just think about, like, it is trauma. Even when, not to go this far back, but even during slavery, like you don't know when your kids are going to be ripped from you. You don't know, and so you hold on to them and you try to instill as much as you can within them and try to teach them how to be perfect for someone else, and not truly like learn how to be who they desire to be. It was just based off of where we were during those times and how we had to be to just stay alive. And so I think a lot of those thoughts, those child rearing came from that time. And it's just now where people are starting to take therapy and seriously, and starting to try to like break loose from all of those things that have a hold on us, because that's all we know. So I agree with everyone.
I definitely agree with everyone as well. And just to add back to Shatima's point about slavery too, I was watching a documentary not too long ago. They even talked about like the way Black people talk about their children is something that was passed down from slavery. So instead of uplifting your child. Oh yeah, my child could do this, my child could do that. Isn't he good at this and isn't he good at that? They said Black parents more they downplay their child. So they don't seem as great, because if they paint them in this picture of them being great, then they might be, taken from them. So, oh, your child can, do this. Oh no, not my child. He's this, he's that. And so I think there are certain ways, like you said, things that were passed down because of the trauma of slavery, because of the trauma of Reconstruction, because of the trauma of the civil rights movement, segregation, integration. I think all those things, because we had to basically learn how to survive. In order to survive, people had to dumb down people, not make them seem as smart, not make them seem as special, because they can be taken, So there are certain aspects, I think, of historical trauma that is naturally ingrained in us, because trauma is like that's passed down through your DNA. And I think there are things that are naturally ingrained of us, and maybe even the protective part of us. So that's why we're not as free with our children. We're not like, you can go and explore and do the whole, everything that everybody else is doing, because there's that fear of losing your child, coming home one day and they're not being there because you let let go, you were loose. And so, and I think, like you said, it's going to take therapy. It's probably going to take a lot for us as a community, just even having conversations like this, where we have to be aware of first, hey, this is something that we've been doing for years. And we need to start letting go. I don't want to parent my child like a white person, but you got to think too, white people are very free thinkers. I don't agree with some of the techniques that they use, but they are very free. They have this sense of, I guess because it's privilege. They have this sense of authoritative, I'm in control, what I say matters. But
it's they live very carefree lives.
Yeah, very carefree.
It's very like, we just go on and do whatever we want to do. And we, kind of live ourselves, and we are resign ourselves to this box, but really we've been placed there, unfortunately, and we haven't found our way, out per se. We tend to hold on to a lot of the things that just are, like you say, part of our DNA and our culture.
Yeah, it's privilege. I read this article about the influence of socioeconomic status on raising children. And they were talking about how if you are a middle-class person, you have a lot more leisure time to talk to your children, to teach them about the fact, like when you go out to restaurants, right? You might be a parent that makes your child order for themselves. And so when you do that, that teaches them confidence. It teaches them that I can talk to adults. It teaches them that their values and their opinions and what they want matter. So even little small things like that, you are instilling confidence in your kid. Whereas you might have another parent that, they order for their children and they don't have those kind of opportunities to instill those same values in their kid. Not saying that's the end all be all, but they were just using those as examples to say, little things that we do are going to influence the level of confidence that we have. And if you are a working parent, you don't necessarily have the same amount of time to talk to your kids, to take them back and forth to the activities or to process things that they've seen on the news or on Instagram or on Twitter. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're parenting them in a way that's bad or negative. Sometimes it's just the influence of where you are and your status or the resources that you have that also influences what you're able to do. And I thought that was really, really interesting way of, even they were talking about travel time, right? So if you are from a community where all of the work is like in the city and you spend a lot of time in the car, that's time away from your family. So when people are, in communities where there's work in the community, they're more engaged with their children and more able to kind of be around, whereas other people may not be, and that has an influence. So I thought that was really, interesting, and just thinking about social economic status and how that even those small things influence our parenting also.
Yeah, you know what? I definitely see that in my line of work. I work in pediatric healthcare as a pediatric nurse practitioner, and I definitely notice those same things that you're commenting on. Like, some of the white families will prep their children, like, okay, we're here, this is what we talked about at home. They're going to look in your ear because your ear was hurting, or they will have their children tell, I'll say, what brings you in today? And they'll turn to the child and have the child say what's going on. And, some of those kids, they'll be like 3 years old and they'll be like, my stomach was hurting and then I threw up and then I had diarrhea. They'll tell it all. And then some, other families just kind of take over and don't have the child speak, and the child isn't prepped for the exam, and sometimes is very fearful. And I do notice those things. And another thing that I do notice is that I feel like Black parents and also Asian parents tend to have a tighter rein on their child. They don't let them roam around the clinic. They're not playing and running off as much. And I feel like white families and Latino families allow their children to kind of roam about and play and kind of be disruptive and wander off and not really so worried about them. But yeah, you can definitely notice those differences, those cultural differences in parenting. I notice it all the time in my line of work. Or maybe socioeconomic differences, I will say. A little bit of both, probably.
Okay, so this leads us to our final question, ladies. So what negative and or positive effects does fear-based parenting have on children? So we talked about, so what do you think, if those of you that were fear-based parented, what are some of the positives or negatives? Those of you that are parents now, what do you notice in your children now that are due to the consequences of your parenting, or the effects of your parenting?
I wanted to ask Shatima something, because I think in the beginning you were saying that you like things are different this time. Were you referring to having the age gap in your children, like how you parent now versus like your younger child? Was it 2, did you say, versus your 17-year-old?
Yes. My experience being a parent this go around is definitely different, because one, we're more established. I'm married. We have access to, I think, a lot more than I thought I had access to before. And I think I'm more comfortable in who I am. And so that plays a part in who I show up as a parent. So I'm able to be confident as a parent, where you're still younger, you're at 21, 22, you're still learning yourself. You're still learning like who you want to be, and like trying to navigate through parenting was just different than it is now. Like I'm able to, be confident in any decision that I make. And, even just the whole birthing experience. I'm on this Black maternal health board for Frederick County. And just to be confident in how I want my birthing experience to look like, and you're not going to tell me what you think my child should do. I'm going to tell you, I wanted that skin to skin. I want certain things. So I think the experience is just, it's different. It was better. There's a lot more access to research. Well, it probably was then too. You just didn't pay attention. I didn't pay attention to it. But yeah, it's just different. And even with my 17-year-old, I think learning and growing and having a very supportive partner helps. My husband is very, very supportive, and it's just different. Those things that, I'm not as much a disciplinarian as he is. And so we still kind of go back and forth on that. Like he's a guy, but I had to learn to let him lead as a father. It's just different. But he came into our lives when my daughter was like 4.5. And they have a wonderful relationship. They're very strong in here. She's about to graduate high school. And it's just different for us all around. And then our youngest, who is now 2, has a very strong personality. If she doesn't want to do something, she is not going to do it. Where I always thought like the oldest was very easy. Like she was a very easy kid. Like there was never like things that I've experienced now, even at 2, I didn't experience with her. Like it was really just she was an easy kid. And she's always been very laid back. And so I thank God for that. Like I'm thankful for that, because I don't know how I would have been able to navigate if it was a little bit different, like, I don't know if I answered your question. I hope I answered your question, but yeah, I'm just more confident in who I show up as a parent, that, I wasn't trying to be pleasing like, I don't have to please you. Like if I need time for my child, even though, you're asking me, can we go on a play date? Can we do this? Can we do that? Like, I'm okay with no. Like that is a full sentence. You could say no. I don't have the mental capacity to do that right now. Like, and with the oldest, I always felt like I had to be on the go. Like I always had to be doing something, where now I'm able to say like, no, we could be home on a Saturday. We're okay. We had a full weekend. We had a full week, where I always felt like with the oldest, I had to do something. She had to be in something. We had to be going somewhere. Because again, that fear of failure, or that fear of like, oh, you're lazy, that was a fear. Like I never wanted anybody to think I was a lazy parent. And I think with having my husband around and being supportive, like, you can relax a little bit. Like you cooked all week, you've done this, like you've done homework, we prepared her. So I'm just grateful for where I am as a parent. Oh.
I think that goes along with what Lauren was saying, like, probably with that article and, what we see in a lot of the research, like, again, me and Nick are nurse practitioners. I work with adults, but like what you said, the stability, like when you talk about socioeconomic status, educational, like the more education you have, the better outcomes people have just overall in life and health. Right. And like with that article, I think what Shatima, you got some of that experience, like you say, as you got older, like there's no better teacher than experience, and having that 2-parent household, being stable. It lends something where, like you say, you guys can kind of pivot, you can bounce off of each other as needed, which means you don't have just one parent who, if they are out of gas, there's nobody to kind of take the ball in those situations, so like you say, that can certainly change the outcomes, like you say, for like with parenting and gaining insight, basically, as you get older, insight and experience, like you say, it makes a difference having stability in a 2-parent household. Absolutely. I mean, good discussion.
And going back to what Neka said, like you mentioned having a hold on your children, like that was a fear. Like I didn't want people to think, because I was young, like, you're just young Black, ghetto girl that can't control their kids. So some parenting is out of fear, because I never wanted people to think that, I was, what do you call it? A statistic. You're just a statistic, and you're not educated. And it was like sometimes
a stereotype
that, yes, I would lead with that, and now I don't have to. Like again, that confidence is a lot different. And so when we were in a restaurant or we went to, you were going to sit right there and you were not going to move, and you weren't going to cause a ruckus. Like you were just going to sit, and somebody said, and that whole, like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, that was instilled in our kids early. Like someone that's older than you do not call them by their first name. That's Mr. and Mrs. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, type of thing. And I think I still will probably I still hold on to that, because I just think it's respect. But I did, like, when we were out in public, that fear of, like, this young Black ghetto girl, I didn't want that placed on me. So I would definitely make sure that she was in control, so to speak.
I wonder how much of that is like trauma too, because I know that a lot of people that have had children early or earlier than they feel they were supposed to, even when you get to be older, there's still like a stigma that you carry around for a longer period of time of being a teenage mom or a young mom. And this word of like not wanting to be a statistic was so powerful that even as you grow older, it still, plays a part in your, in the life as well. So I think that's such a good point that you made.
And say I used to hate going out without Aji with the kids, because our kids are very young, as far as like very close together in age. You're like stair steps. So people would see me out with 3 young kids and they automatically make assumptions like, you're not married, you have this, wow, look at you, you have your hands full. And it's nothing against single mom. It's nothing against women that have multiple children, but the way that people would look at you and the treatment that you would get, that was very hurtful. It's like, I have a master's degree. I'm not at work right now because daycare is too expensive, but
It's
people would automatically assume because I'm a young Black woman, I'm not married, and I just had all of these kids out of wedlock. And that was not the case in my case. But even though, and it's hard to control 3 people under 3 years old, I know, like, people say, yeah, I have them on the rim. Yeah, but you got a baby here, you got another toddler here, that's why we don't judge parents now. Like, if we see people out, we don't judge, because your 2-year-old can have a tantrum just as well. No matter how good of a parent you are, they can have a tantrum in the middle of the store while you got one here and another one hanging on your hip. It's possible. So I don't really, when I'm out in public, I try not to judge people's parenting, because it's no joke. You can't control, kids are very emotional. You can't control emotion. You can control behavior. You can say that's not an acceptable response. We can try that again, but we can't control that emotion. He's not going to be throwing everything in the store but I can't control him laying down in the car on the floor while I got this one here and this one there, And I didn't like going out and Lauren knows, I did not like going out with the kids when they were that little. Because it was a big struggle, and then you always get the eyes, you always get that assumption, and so I think that's kind of one thing, like, I take, like, from Shatima, you never want to be looked at as a statistics. Nothing wrong with being if you are in that situation, there's nothing wrong. That's judging your situation. I don't know what put you in that situation, and I just so I don't judge people, but at the same time, it's hard to be looked at that way. And so I really do have sympathies for mothers that go out and then people automatically judge you and assume about something about you, who knows, what happened to call that situation. So, so that's in a sense of I had, just like you did Shatima, I had that fear. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't like going out without Aji, because I had 3 kids under 3 years old. And can you just imagine like having three toddlers, and going in the grocery store, but you have to go to the grocery store and you have to take them in with you because you don't have no one else to watch the kids. So, but I tried to go out as much as I could, though, even though I hated it. We went to the library, we read books, we did everything. Like, we went to the park. We did different things so I can keep them well-rounded, but I always dreaded it. Taking out that double stroller, walking through, having this one on your hip. Oh man, Lauren, we went to the zoo together. It's a mess. It was a lot. But as they get older, that fear, I don't care. Now everybody's assuming that Anna's my sister, because she's just as tall. I didn't mean to say her name, but she's just as tall as me. So now it's more like, okay, that's, yeah. But it was always kind of like that fear in the back of my mind. I'm being judged. And that's all. And yeah, and white people are the cruelest with the looks, man. They are. And now, like, and I don't care anymore. But when they were young, just the assumptions that people would make and the comments they would say, it was hurtful.
The unsolicited advice they
would
give you, if you didn't ask for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know if you guys read. There's a book called "The Sisters Are All Right," and I think you guys should all read it. I think every Black woman should read it. It's just about the narratives of Black women in America and really how much pressure is on us, thinking about the stereotypes and the narratives that have been given about us and how that affects how we move through the world, right? There's other, races that would never have to think about these things when they're out with their children. They don't have those pressures. We're, worried about people thinking that we're single mothers, worried about people thinking that we're single, worried about people thinking that we're hypersexual, that we're obese. Like, there's just so many things, that we're uneducated, that we're unprofessional. There's so much pressure on us on top of everything else that just goes on with being a human. I read that book and it really just gave me a good perspective. They kind of broke down like pretty much every stereotype about Black American women and how it can really affect how we move through the world. And it's just a lot of pressure. And when somebody puts it all together in one piece of work, it's like, whoa, we all need a little therapy to unleash some of this stuff, release some of these things, and just really, go through it. Things that we hadn't even thought about that shaped some of, the fears we have, some of the things that we did, some of the things that we're afraid to do. But I highly recommend it. It was very eye-opening for me. And it's not that long. It's a shorter.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. But answering the question, I think, Shanice, you were saying, what are like the positive and negative outcomes from fear-based parenting? So I would say for me, I feel like my parents' kind of fear of us being failures and pushing us to be really strong academically did, help me be more studious. It helped me be a good student. I did a lot of reading. I feel like I'm more intellectual these days. I couldn't do anything but sit up in the house and read books. So, I'm very much into that. I'm reading books, I'm watching documentaries. I'm trying to learn about all different cultures and different things. And so I think that was really helpful in me, becoming successful along my career path. But I think a negative in that way, it kind of stifled my creativity. Like, I wanted to play instruments. I wanted to explore some other things. And that kind of was like, I don't know about that. Worry about your academics, get to school, follow this charted path. So I find, as an adult now, I'm trying to, I'm out here making waist beads. I'm trying to get these piano lessons. I'm trying to like catch up on those things that were kind of like stomped out when I was a kid. And then also in our conversations today, it made me think about sleepovers and how we couldn't sleep over, me and my, two sisters, but my brother was allowed to sleep over, right? And he had a lot more freedom to explore the area. And I was just really been kind of thinking about the gendered, parenting. And I think that's probably where my feminism was born back then, just seeing how my brother had all this freedom. He could do all of these things and how unfair it was. I'm in the house cooking for the family, cleaning, doing all this. And he's riding his bike, doing this at the corner store. And so I think I take that as a positive. I feel like, that was born from noticing those kind of things. And then I think that also I'm more of a free thinker and I'm not somebody that's easily controlled. Like, I'm not somebody who, somebody can just tell me something, I'm going with it. I need to research it. I need to see, is this actually true? Are there statistics? Like, I'm not going to be somebody that's easily manipulated. And I think that also comes from just me not having freedom and being told what to do. I'm like, okay, now I'm like a little more suspicious when people are coming with that kind of vibe these days. So I think that is a positive for me as well. But I think, my limits and freedom at home. And then when I went away to college, it was complete freedom, right? And so that was kind of a negative because I didn't have that, well, not really work-life balance, that school life balance, because I was out there trying to be on the social scene, go to all the parties, playing spades in the union, hanging out with all the people. And the studying kind of like fell by the wayside a little bit because I was trying to catch up on my social life. So I think that I would say is kind of a bit of a negative because it took me a while to figure out how I can manage freedom with my studies, but I got it together. But I think those are the positive and negatives I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, does anybody else want to go?
I think because my parents were, I had probably more freedom and stuff. I think things just ended up being positive because I think some things were innate for me. Like I just was kind of a self-directed person. I just, had good judgment early in life. Like I was kind of mature, like I was kind of already like on that path, so even though I may have been around some things that probably weren't the best situations, I just was not like an active participant. I would just be like, oh, that wasn't my thing. I would go to clubs and use fake IDs and stuff, but I wasn't a drinker. So I didn't want to partake in drink. It just was like nothing that I liked being there, but I just didn't have to participate in all the activities, that everybody else, was, were involved in. So, it worked out for me, but oftentimes people, fall victim to like peer pressure and you want to do what everybody else is doing, so it really, might depend on, like the natural personality of, like the child, like what you want to do. I went to college, like none of those things were even like questionable for me. I just wanted to do it. My parents really didn't even have to like push me to go or give me like really support in it. I was very like self-motivated to do all those things. And it just makes you think about like what Nika was saying, like I was like being strong-willed, like you just, I was just kind of did my own thing and I just kind of made good choices, but I think, I do think about like you said, like, those negatives, which I think, just thinking about maybe some of my friends and even like what Nika was saying today, like, sneaking out and, doing all of these things, because somebody, like being restricted and not having that freedom will, really have you seeking out that freedom by all means necessary. So that can be like the negative of, like kind of, like you say, parenting, like just out of fear all the time.
All right, Lauren, did you want to go? Positive, negatives?
I can't really think of any positive or negatives. I think, parenting is a difficult job and you get it right sometimes, you get it wrong sometimes. And so, you throw it up in the air and see what lands.
Okay, good. Tima, can you go right now? No,
I can go.
Okay.
Positive and negatives. I think for my experience, I think the positive outweighs the negative for me, even though I don't know if that should be the case, but I think for me, just being able to make decisions and having the journey that I had, even though, it was based out of fear, being parented and parenting, I'm not ungrateful for my experience and, for my mother. I think even though she did have to parent out of fear, a lot of times I think that it did help. Although I don't know if do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if it should have, but it did. To have to parent out of fear, I don't think is always healthy because I think you're always on a defense as opposed to getting ahead of things. Like you're kind of like catching up. But that's all I have.
I would say positive that it kept me, as growing up being parent, it kept me safe. It kept me from a lot of situations where I could have been in, you know, bad places because my parents kind of restricted me. So it kept me safe growing up. But it also negative. I was very naive too, because I wasn't put into situations, and growing up, when having to navigate those as a young adult, it was a little bit more difficult because I didn't have tools, because they were so forbidden and restricted to talk about, that I feel like I could have been better prepared. And so I felt like I a lot of my young adult experiences, I felt very like in the dark and naive. But so that would be the only negative, like kind of keeps you out of situations. And so you don't really know how to deal with situations when you get into those different situations. And you're like, but as far as our children go, I hope that we don't parent to the extent that they feel like they're going to be not equipped, because I want them to be equipped. So, and like we don't know the future. So that's the hardest thing about being a parent. You don't know the outcome of your choices until they become an adult. And so like, I really wish we had like we can see into a future, a magic ball to know like the effects of our choices. So I'm hoping that we're making the choice, and I know that any choice that we make isn't going to be in the best interest of our child and of our children. So yeah, so I just hope we're doing the right thing, and helping them, keep them safe and alive, and so they can make it to their 18, 19, whatever. They'll never stop being your child. So we can parent them into adulthood, and they can come to us with advice if they thought we did a good job or not. So, but that's it. Does anybody have any final words? Let me thank Shatima for coming on. You have been a wonderful guest to have. Please feel free to join us for any other conversation. Just hit me up, because we do talk about a lot of interesting stuff here. So does anybody have any final remarks before we close? No.
I'm just going to say thank you, ladies, for having me. This was a great and significant conversation for me. It definitely is going to end my Sunday very well. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Did you want to shout out to Kara, Nneka? I know you do each time, but it doesn't hurt to continue.
It doesn't hurt. You can follow me at Waist Watcher Beads. I make lovely custom waist beads.
I have an Instagram page for, mental health realness for the Black community at the Black Psych and P, BLK Psych and P on Instagram.
All right. And of course, as always, shout out to the Black Advancement. Check them out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Like, follow, and subscribe to their page. And feel free to leave us a comment. How did you do it as a parent? Or how do you do it? Or how were you parented as a child? Were you parented out of fear? Do you parent your children out of fear? Let us know. We would like to continue this discussion with you. All right. Peace.
Bye.